So I'm really excited. I know you're all excited about the session today. And then as it's called, The Brand in You, Shaping a Powerful Professional Identity to Inspire and Lead, which is an empowering and highly interactive masterclass designed to help you actively show and shape your professional identity and reputation by confidently and consciously controlling how you can become the boss of your own personal brand and communicate your value to the world in a consistent, cohesive and compelling way. Carly Lyon has spent her entire career shaping, managing and elevating the personal brands and reputations of remarkable individuals from all over the world. Her former clients include a world-leading supermodel, New York Times best-selling authors, thought leaders and pioneers in the world of wellness. Today, Carly is dedicated to helping individuals communicate their value, increase their levels of influence and become more visible to the audiences that matter. She's a regular contributor to Forbes on the topic of personal branding and has been invited to speak to the teams of iconic brands internationally, including the likes of Financial Times, Spotify, Virgin and L'Oreal, to name just a few. Today she's going to be sharing with us practical ways for you to shape your professional identity to be in a better position to inspire and lead. Please help me welcome to the stage Carly Lyon.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. Now, I would normally thank any audience that takes the time and makes the effort to come and see me speak, but today it feels especially relevant, considering you've come to the end of the FAAA Congress and you are no doubt feeling physically exhausted, potentially mentally overloaded for all of the best reasons, but you've still taken the time, you've dug deep, and you've showed up today. So I think that deserves a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. No, bigger than that. Come on. Yeah. Perfect. So I am here today to talk to you about personal branding and essentially mastering the art of shaping your reputation so that you can be seen, heard, and remembered for all of the right reasons by all of the right people. The idea being that if people can't see you, they can't hear you, and they don't know who you are, then how can they make that vital decision as to whether they want to work with you, invest with you, collaborate with you, partner with you, even date you, right? So if you only remember one thing from the session today, remember this, that visibility leads to possibility. In fact, let's say that together. Visibility leads to possibility, right? The more that people can see you and hear you, the more likely you will attract the people, places, and opportunities into your life that actually matter. So when it comes to this topic of personal branding, my entire career has ultimately centered around this topic. I launched my own PR consultancy at the young age of 21. And as Nicole mentioned, I was lucky enough to travel all over the world and represent a host of remarkable individuals from all walks of life. From a world-leading supermodel who you would all know as Miranda Kerr, to New York Times bestselling authors, a world-leading economist, inventors, musicians. I even represented a celebrity foot reader from the UK who believed she could read your future on the soles of your feet. And if that's not proof that everyone has a story, I don't really know what is. And if you happen to be wondering, by the way, guys, well, Carly, what did she see on your feet? Well, let me tell you, because I'll never forget this reading. So I'm sitting in my office. Jane is carefully cradling my feet. And she's looking down, and she looks up at me, and she's got this really serious look on her face, and I'm thinking, what are my toes telling her? And she's looking down, looking up, and she just, almost sighed of resignation, and she just said, Carly, you've got to stop wearing high heels. But all jokes aside, in that time representing all of those amazing people, I gained real and invaluable insight into what it takes to shape, manage, and elevate a personal brand. And so I'm bringing all of that to the stage today to share with you. But what I'm also bringing to the stage is my personal experience. And this is somewhat ironically different. Because you see, it wasn't until I was on extended maternity leave that I discovered in all of that time, representing all of those amazing people, I had never taken the time to shape, manage, or elevate my own personal brand. So here I was, I understood the power and purpose of personal branding, but I wasn't applying the thinking to myself. So much so that if you had have Googled me just 5 years ago, this is what you will have seen. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, Carly looks so different with clothes on, right? But I was absolutely terrified about putting myself out there. And so I want you to know that today I bring to the stage a very intimate understanding of the fears and insecurities that do hold an individual back from putting themselves out there. And we're going to touch on those today as well. So in the session, what I'd like to cover is this. Firstly, I'd like to give you a definition of personal branding so that you can start to think about, well, how does this apply to you and your journey and career? Secondly, we are going to talk about the 3 thoughts that generally hold an individual back from putting themselves out there. And I have come to realize in the last 5 years, being out in the market, talking to, coaching individuals at all levels of their career, that these thoughts are universal. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you 4 steps for you to become the boss, BOSS, of your personal brand moving forward. How does that sound? Good. Okay, good. Is anyone in here because they thought this was the relaxation room? No. And Tony, maybe turn up the lights just a little bit more, not so much on me, but just on the audience to keep everyone awake. I'll try my best to do that as well. All right, so the first question that we need to answer together is, well, what actually is a personal brand? Now, it's difficult. There we go. Now I can see you better. So I'd like to put that out to you first and get some feedback from you in terms of what you think about when you see the word personal brand. Now, I feel like there's not too many people in the room. We can probably just go with shouting it out rather than making you get up and go to the microphone. So maybe put up your hand. Who would like to have a go and tell me what they think about when they see the word personal brand? Who's going to break the ice? Yeah. How other people perceive you? Yep. What else? Come on, I know that there's a lot more answers in the room. Yes. Your reputation? Yep, absolutely. In line with your values, showing up in a way that's in line with your values, 100%. What else? What do you think of when you're obviously in this room because the idea of personal branding was of interest to you. But what do you think of when you see the word personal brand? Your presence? Yeah, absolutely. Who you really are? Yes, love that. Yeah. Your image? 100%. Anything else? Okay, so here's my definition of what a personal brand is. A personal brand is the way an individual intentionally presents and packages who they are and what they do for a purpose. Now, if you were to Google the term personal branding, you will come across someone who says, you have a personal brand whether you shape it or not. I disagree 100%. You might have a reputation whether you shape it or not. But if you have to ask yourself if you have a personal brand, then you don't. Because a personal brand is something very intentional. I wrote about this for Forbes and I said, to say someone has a personal brand, whether they shape it or not, is like saying that a busy, no-name street food vendor in the back streets of Bangkok is as much as a brand as McDonald's. Now, I'm not talking about reach, popularity, or amount of money spent on advertising. I'm talking about one is adhering to the laws of branding. It's consistent, it's cohesive, it's reliable. You know what you're going to get every single time, whereas the other is not. Can you see that? So it's a very intentional act. The second word that I want you to really focus on is purpose. It is my theory and now experience that the vast majority of people do not want attention for the sake of attention itself. There's a small population that love attention for the sake of attention itself. If you want to see them in their natural habitat, just watch The Desperate Housewives of Sydney, right? But for the rest of us mere mortals, we don't want attention for the sake of attention itself. It's why the vast majority of the population would rather die than do public speaking. The only thing that is going to get most people out of their comfort zone and into the proverbial spotlight is if they have a very clearly defined purpose for doing it. And that is why it's those individuals that you see out in the world that have iconic personal brands. They are driven by a very clear sense of purpose. So when I talk about purpose, I like to share the parable of the 3 bricklayers. Who's ever heard this parable? No, a few of you. So the parable is 3 bricklayers are asked, what are you doing? The first says, I'm laying bricks. The second says, I'm building a church. And the third says, I'm building the house of God. Now, excuse the religious connotations, but you can clearly see what I'm getting at here. The first bricklayer has a job. The second has a career. And the third has a calling. Again, it's my theory and experience that it's the people who have a very clear sense of calling. They're the ones that take the time and make the consistent effort to put themselves out there because of that sense of calling. So just for a moment, I'd like you, if you've got a pen and paper, or just to even just think about it for a minute, just reflect on it. What is your bigger picture purpose? Not what you do, not what your role title is, but what's the ultimate bigger picture purpose of why you do what you do? So just reflect on that for a minute. Would anyone like to share their bigger picture purpose? That's a big ask, I know. Okay, next question that we need to answer. So now we know what a personal brand is. What are the benefits of having a well-established, reputable personal brand? What do you think some of the benefits might be? Who's willing to have a go? What are the benefits of having a well-established, reputable personal brand? Yep, the gentleman with the white shirt. A sustainable business? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It accelerates your purpose. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yes. People come to see you because they know who you are. Yeah, absolutely. What else? Yes, I love that. People know, like, and trust you before they've ever even met you. It's like your personal brand precedes you. I remember there was a story. Have you heard of Stephen Bartlett? He's a well-known speaker in the UK, and he said he was going to pitch for business, and he said he recognized the power of his personal brand when the guy that he was pitching to then kind of secretly pulled him aside, and he was like, "Can I have your autograph?" So absolutely, it's before you've even met them. What else? What are some of the benefits of having a well-established, reputable personal brand? Yeah. Yes. You'll attract your ideal client because they almost qualify themselves, right? They work out straight away. Is that person right for me? 100%, which saves time. As a small, medium, or even large business owner, it saves time. What else? Well, I know there's many more, but the point is it's clear to see that we know there are benefits to becoming and having a reputable, well-established brand. You're the go-to expert. You're top of mind when someone thinks of whatever it is that they need, they think of you. So we know there is a benefit. In that case, when we know there's a benefit, and you're obviously, again, you're in this room because you know that there is a benefit to having a clear, cohesive, consistent, and reputable personal brand, what is it that holds an individual back from actually putting themselves out there? So early on in my content creation days, I wrote an article on LinkedIn, and the article title was "Beware of these 3 thoughts on the path to putting yourself out there." And the article went viral, like to the point of having something like 90,000 likes and thousands of comments from all over the world. I was even invited to join a few religions, believe it or not, which really only shows you what kind of reach the article had. And to me, what that means is that people resonated with what was written, and they saw themselves in those 3 thoughts. So I want to share them with you today, with the idea being, and Robin Sharma has a beautiful quote that says, "When you run towards fear, fear runs away." So when you know if these are the thoughts, and you confront that these are the thoughts that are holding you back, and you also recognize that these are universal thoughts, then suddenly their power isn't as potent. So what are the 3 thoughts? First one, who am I to speak? Now, this was a big one for me, as I said to you, when I recognized that I had held myself back and I was terrified of putting myself out there. In my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm not good enough for my personal brand to matter. I don't look good enough. I don't sound good enough. I'm a high school dropout. I don't have good enough qualifications. There are people that are better at what I'm doing, better clients, etc. I had this long laundry list. So I had this idea of, well, who am I to speak? Nobody's going to care. Who has ever had a thought like that? And maybe, you know what, I'm not even going to ask you to put your hands up because maybe you don't want to share that. But what I would say to you is this. If you ever take the time, or when you hear yourself say, who am I to speak? I want you to counter that with, well, who am I not to speak? And why not you? How many of you have had a colleague or a peer or it's someone maybe you don't even know? Maybe they're on social media. Maybe you see them at an industry event. And you're sitting there or you're reading the thing and you're thinking, I could do that. I could say that. Who has had that experience where you think, I'm as qualified as them to be doing that, but you're not doing it because you don't think you're good enough or you're questioning why it should be you? Which is why I've got this quote on my business card, that there are people less qualified than you doing the things you want to do simply because they decide to believe in themselves, period. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So again, if you ever hear yourself say, well, who am I to speak? I want you to counter that with, well, who are you not to speak? And see if you actually come up with anything relevant. The next thought is, I'm not saying anything new, so why would anyone care? I'm not saying anything new. I've got no new idea to share, so why would I bother putting anything out there? Now, when I was researching the article, I came across this quote from Mark Twain. Well, it's apparently from Mark Twain. It might be from Albert Einstein. Who knows? But it says that there's no such thing as a new idea. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. We give them a turn and they make new and curious combinations. We keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass that have been used throughout the ages. I love the idea of this. When I came across this, I found that so liberating. We put so much pressure on ourselves trying to think of a new idea without realizing it's actually who we are and how we say what we say, our unique experiences, our unique stories that make the idea new. So let me ask you this question. Or, better still, I want you to imagine that today I said to you all, guys, I didn't put this in the program because I didn't want to freak you out. But later today, I'm going to be filling this auditorium, and each of you are going to come up and deliver a keynote. You've got no choice. You've got to do it. But don't worry. Don't worry. I have written a keynote. It's the most earth-shattering idea. It's sensational. It's incredible. So you don't have to worry about the idea being great. You just have to come up and deliver it. But each of you deliver the same keynote. Now answer me this. Will the audience respond to each of you exactly the same way? Hands up if you think, yes, they will respond to each of you exactly the same way. But you're saying the same thing. So how many of you think they won't respond to you exactly the same way? Yeah. I don't even need to ask you why. It's because each of you will come up. What you dress is different. How you look is different. The sound of your voice. Different audience members are going to connect with different speakers in a different way, even if they are saying exactly the same thing. So next time you think, well, I've got nothing new to say, so why would anyone care? Just remember, it's not about what you say, it's how you say it, it's why you say it, it's the stories that you say it with. And that's what makes it new. Okay, the last thought is everyone will think I have a big ego. Now, this is written in English. If I translated this into Australian, that would be, everyone will think I am a wanker. Yeah. So for the past 5 years, I've heard that word more than I've ever heard it in my entire life. Somewhere along the line, someone has put it out there that personal branding is all about being a quote-unquote W, right? Which is crazy to think that. So there are a few things that I want to say on this. Firstly, when personal branding is done well, it's not self-promotion, it's selfless promotion. It's coming back to that idea of putting yourself out there for a purpose, that you're wanting to genuinely add value to the audience that you want to serve. The second thing I want you to recognize with this, there will be people, let's say you decide to build your brand more proactively, and maybe part of that is doing the speaking circuit or becoming more active on LinkedIn, right? I promise you, in fact, I guarantee you, you will have a friend or colleague that will make a dig at you. 100%. Oh, I saw you on LinkedIn getting famous, right? Let me tell you about those people. Their criticism of you has nothing to do with you. They are looking at you and feeling bad about themselves because they're too afraid to put themselves out there. So they're going to project that negative feeling onto you because you've had the courage to put yourself out there, and that's not making them feel good. That is the truth. So I guarantee, yes, you will have friends. I had my best friend. She had a big PR manager at Apple. When I sat down and told her, this is what I'm planning to do, I'm going to start talking about personal branding, she was like, oh, so self-indulgent. And then just the other day, she was like, I'm thinking about building my personal brand. And, I was looking at, her initial reaction was that because it was where she was coming from. It had nothing to do with me. So I want you to remember that. Who has had at least one of those thoughts? Put up your hand. Okay? Keep your hand up if you've had at least 2 of those thoughts. Yeah. And who has had 3 of those thoughts? Yeah. And I promise you they are universal. I've worked with individuals just starting out in their career, right up to the top of being CEOs of billion-dollar companies, and they're still having those thoughts. I worked with a lady who works at NASA. She is literally, I'm not just saying this is not a cliche, she is literally the only person in the world who's doing what she's doing. She has a PhD that I actually genuinely was confused reading, because I was like, what does that even mean? And she still questions herself. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we know what a personal brand is. We've talked about briefly what the benefits are, and now we know the 3 thoughts that will typically hold an individual back. Knowing that those thoughts are universal, and the only difference between the people that are putting themselves out there and the people that are not putting themselves out there are the people that are putting themselves out there have had the thoughts, but they're still putting themselves out there regardless. That's the only difference. So now we're going to talk about the 4 steps. But before we do, we're going to play a little game. The game is called Speed Summating. It's not speed dating, and it's definitely not speed mating. I definitely would never be invited to speak ever again. Speed summating. So let me explain what is going to happen. In a moment, I am going to ask you all to stand up. And I'm sorry to the people that are sitting right up at the back seat bandits. I'm going to get everyone to come down and filter out onto the spare space. You're going to then find a partner. Doesn't matter if you know them or you're meeting them for the first time, because you'll just get different responses, but all of it is good. You're going to find a partner, find that partner. You are then going to sum that person up in 3 words. And then that person's going to sum you up in 3 words. Once you're finished, you're going to raise your hand and find somebody else in the room with their hand raised and partner with them. There's only one rule to this game. So let's say I've partnered with someone and I say, curious, confident, and creative. Right? They're my 3 words. The only rule is I'm not allowed to do this. Curious, confident, creative. But what I mean by curious, I don't mean you look strange or anything. I just don't explain it. 3 words, hands up, change. And let's see what comes out. This is just a little taste tester, a little bit of a check-in to what you're projecting right now. Now, you might be sitting there going, Carly, do you realize it was the awards dinner last night and we're all hungover, right? We're not projecting our best selves. Oh, sorry, can't help you there. You made your bed. Okay, so everyone stand up and come down to the spare space, filter out. Tony's going to put on a little bit of background music. Guys, I can see you up the back there. I promise it's a fun exercise. So good. So good. Put up your hand if you got any words that surprised you. Yeah, there's a few words that are perfect. Who got words that delighted them? Amazing. I love that. And looking out to the room, I can't imagine there was any nasty people. No one walked up to anyone and was just like, bitch. No? No. The fact you're laughing makes me question. No, joking. Perfect. So that's just a great little exercise, like I said, to get a little bit of a touch base on where you are, what that message is that you're projecting, and, you know, whether or not you're intentionally thinking about how you're packaging yourself. Before I coach a client, what I'll generally ask them to do is reach out to 5 people in their career, in the career context, and get them to ask them, sum them up in 5 words or less. And it can be really enlightening. Sometimes the words are exactly what you want them to be. Other times you start to see a theme that you don't want to see, and it allows you to take corrective action. All right, so now we're going to talk about 4 steps that you can take to become the boss, B-O-S-S, of your personal brand. So here they are. Be your future self. own your story, serve an audience, seek a platform. And we're going to go through each one of these individually. So let's start with be your future self. Now, the reality is that personal branding is not a short-term activity. It really is a long-term mindset. You can't expect that you say, oh, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there for 3 months and just see what kind of result it yields, what kind of return on investment I get. It's not going to work. It won't be life-changing, I can tell you now. It's almost actually a waste of time. It's a long-term mindset. It's really investing for the future. And in fact, so much so that you want to be sure that what you're doing today is helping get you to where you want to go. Because it is going to require time and effort for all of it to build, for you to get to the point where there is a tipping point and people do know you as the go-to expert. They do recognize you. It's not something that happens straight away. So you need to start with the end in mind. Now, there's some really interesting work that's been done in the world of psychology around this idea of future self-thinking. One study in particular was directed by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Hal Hershfield. Dr. Hal Hershfield earned his doctorate at Stanford University, and today he's a professor at UCLA of marketing and behavioral decision making. And he ran a really interesting study around this idea of future self-thinking. Him and his team got a whole group of students together, and each of the students were given a digital avatar. And with that digital avatar, they went into this virtual reality. And if you watch his TED Talk, you see him go into this virtual reality, go into this virtual reality and walk around. And there's this moment where they see themselves in a mirror, and they see themselves like, whoa. Now, here's the thing. Half of the students had a digital avatar of what they look like today. The other half of the students, their digital avatar was digitally enhanced in a way that was them, but in 40 years' time. So again, they walk into this virtual reality and see themselves, and they're like, whoa, that's what I'm going to look like. But in that moment, they recognize that who they're going to be in the future is not who they are now. Who would agree that who they were 10 years ago is not who they are today? Yeah. In some instances, we're totally different people. And with Botox, we might look similar, but we're totally different people. And so this idea that they've gone into this virtual reality and seen that person, they recognize that everything they do today has a direct impact on that person in the future. And so what was interesting is at the end of this journey into this virtual reality, the students came back and they were asked to answer a series of questions. In this case, the questions were related to long-term financial decision making. And they found that the students who saw themselves or met themselves as them in 40 years' time, they were more willing to save 20 to 30% more because they recognized, again, everything they do today has an impact on that person. So why am I telling you this in regards to personal branding? How is this relevant? Well, everything you do today in terms of putting yourself out there is going to have an impact on that future person. And you can use this to your benefit today. And this is how. So what's the lady in the beautiful blue suit? What's your name? Karen. So I want you to imagine, guys, that Karen has been invited to speak at a big industry conference. And we're going to assume that Karen has never spoken before. This will be her first speaking opportunity. And she's sitting there and she's freaking out. She's feeling nervous. She's wondering, if she's ready, should she do it. She knows that this is going to supercharge her career. She knows that this is going to put her in front of the clients that she wants to be in front of, but she's questioning herself and her ability to deliver. In that moment, if Karen were to sit down and think, what would my future self say to me right now? Karen, what would your future self say? Go for it. Give Karen's future self a round of applause. Yeah, so you can really use this as a psychological tool to your advantage. So how many of you have ever written a post that you're about to post on LinkedIn? You might have agonized over it for like half an hour, and then that moment where you have to press publish, you're like, yeah, no, not going to do it. How many of you have ever done that? Yeah. So again, it's also the small moments where you think, well, to get to my 50th post where I've actually got a thriving social online presence and community, I've got to get through the discomfort of my first. So what would my future self say? So Dr. Hal Hershfield says that the analogy of the future self as another person may seem like a strange one, but it is rather powerful when it comes to understanding long-term decision making. Would you agree? Yeah. Okay, so be your future self. Keep that person in mind. Think about, where do you want to go? Not only use it as a psychological tool, have your future self be your mentor of sorts, but really shape how you're showing up today in a way that does resonate with where you want to go. Okay, the next one is own your story. To own your story, you have to know your story. The idea here is this idea of being consistent and cohesive. The questions that you have to consider when it comes to owning your story are these. Well, what do you stand for as an individual and or professional? I also term that as, what's your promise? What can people come to expect and depend on from you? What do you want your potential clients and audience to know about you? And what are some of the things that you've done in your past that you need to start to show and communicate your value? What we're aiming for here is that no matter where I encounter you, whether it's online or offline, there is a consistent and cohesive energy and message. In an interview with Tim Ferriss, Mark Zuckerberg said, there's the physical world and there's the digital world, but today, both are the real world. And for anyone who's over 40, myself included, we've been trying to deny it, we've been trying to avoid that truth, but that is the reality today. Both are the real world. And so we need to make sure that where you're showing up, whether it's online or offline, is consistent and cohesive. Now, there's a lot of touch points that we could go into from a personal branding perspective in this regard. But today we only have time to talk about the two most important, in my opinion, communication assets from a personal branding perspective. And they are your headshot and bio. If you're asked to speak at an event, what is the organizer going to ask for? Headshot and bio. If you're asked to be interviewed on a colleague's podcast, what are they going to ask you for? Headshot and bio. If you're asked to be interviewed in the media or an industry outlet, what are they going to ask you for? Headshot and bio. So you want these two communication assets to be absolutely consistent and cohesive and projecting and telling the story that you want them to tell. So let me give you some very practical and actionable steps in both of these areas. The first one is your profile photo. Now, research has shown that your profile image can have a dramatic impact on your perceived levels of likability, credibility, and influence. There's some really interesting research that actually has come out of UNSW. It was led by a gentleman by the name of Dr. David White. And they ran a study to really understand the impact that a profile photo can have on an individual's life and career. And in the report, Dr. David White basically says it has a substantial impact on whether an individual is employed, whether a client works with them, who wants to date them, who wants to be friends with them, right? It has a really big impact. So here are some tips for you. Make sure your image is current, not 10 years old. If I meet you today and then I look you up on LinkedIn and you look 10 years younger, I'm going to wonder what you did last night, okay? You need to make sure that that image is current. Make sure it's clear, not grainy. Now, I spend a lot of time researching, looking at LinkedIn profiles and profile images, and I'm shocked at the amount of pixelated photos that I see. And generally what it is they've been to a wedding, it's the only professional photo they've got, so they crop everyone out of the image and then they're pixelated. But from a symbolic perspective, what do you think grainy tells an audience? What do you think that's projecting? Cheap, what else? No quality, careless, bit dodgy, a bit shady. So make sure your image is not pixelated. Make sure it's professional, but not corporate. So corporate photography generally is like a really bad school photo. It's like this, right? It's stiff, you're not breathing, you're uncomfortable, and we can see that. People know that. So having worked with a supermodel for almost a decade, Miranda had a tip, and I'm going to share it with you all. So Miranda always said, when you're getting your photo taken, look through the lens of the camera as if you're looking at someone you love. And then that energy is going to exude, and people are going to feel that. Now, there's one caveat, guys. Do not look through the camera and think of someone you sexually love, okay? Because you don't want to be seducing your clients with, bedtime eyes, right? So think of your grandma, your dog, your child, but someone you love. And then that way you're going to relax, your body language is going to be open, and you're going to look your best self. So that's really, really important. Now, just looking at, these look quite pixelated now because it's such a massive screen. So just looking at these examples, how you can personalize it and make it your own, how you can tell your stories. Obviously in your styling, you want to avoid any patterns because that's going to age and date much faster. But your styling is going to show your personality, so use that to your advantage. It might be the colors that you use that can reinforce some of your branding and your company branding. Now, the guy in the middle with the green background. Now, if you are a shy and introverted, timid person, and the photographer that you work with is like, hey, we want to show you up as being really confident and outgoing, don't do that. Consistent and cohesive, really in fact, in the lead up to my clients getting their photos taken, I always ask them, what are the words you want a person to associate with you when they see that photo? And use that as a benchmark. And when you're communicating with photographers, just know they don't communicate in words, they communicate in images. Okay, so let's do a little experiment. I want you all to get out your mobile phones and show the person next to you your profile image. No, wait a second. I'm not going to make you do that. If you just dreaded that moment, and if you cringed when I said that, you need to update your profile photo. Because if you can't handle showing the person next to you your profile photo, then why would you have it online? Who knows that they need to update their profile photo now? Yeah. I love it. Now you're all talking about your profile photos. All right. All right, guys, next. Do you want to show each other your profile photos? Some people I saw were like, no way. Other people were like, yeah, here's my profile photo. Okay, the next one is your professional bio. I had a professor say to me once that she thought that a bio was more important than a CV. And for anyone who's read a CV, you would agree with that. Because a bio is your opportunity to tell your story in a more compelling storytelling fashion. And you get to be in complete control of the messages and what you want to highlight. How many of you have ever heard of the game Celebrity Heads? Yeah, you've heard of it? Okay. So I want you to imagine again that part of this session today, I said to you, guys, you all have to put on these strange hats and you have to write on the top of your hat who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And so I've got my hat and I'm thinking about what I want to write. And I write down who I am, what I do, and why I do it. But I write it in a way that I think makes me sound more intelligent. I use words that I think you want to hear. And I put it together in a way that is not actually who I am personally, but I think it sounds better. Am I going to resonate with and attract the right people in the room? If we could then walk around the room and go, oh yeah, I want to connect with her. I'm definitely going to avoid him. Yep, we're definitely connecting. Would I attract the right people? Yes or no? No. So again, this is something that you need to think about with your bio. So here are some tips. Start with a clear, striking statement. If you know you're not a writer, there are amazing journalists waiting to write your bio. Not a huge investment to do it. If you have no budget at all, ChatGPT is going to be your best friend. And actually, it doesn't do too bad a job, but you're going to have to edit. But you want to start with a clear, striking statement. You're telling a story. That first sentence, any journalist will tell you, the first sentence of anything you write needs to captivate. A really great way to know if your bio is resonating with who you want to be is to read it out loud. So go to your LinkedIn profile or go to your bio, read it out loud. If you're bored, if you think it doesn't sound like you, and if you're questioning why you put all of that corporate jargon in it, then you know you're on the wrong track. Avoid corporate jargon altogether. You think it makes you sound more intelligent, and I'm not saying that to you all as an insult, but this was actually came through. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Carmen Gallo on my podcast, and he wrote a book called Talk Like Ted and the BSOS Blueprint. He's a communication expert, and he runs executive education at Harvard. And he even himself said, people use corporate jargon because they think it makes them sound intelligent, but it's actually just really lazy. And it doesn't have the cut through. It won't allow your audience to connect with you. So read it out loud and find that. Tell it like a story and ensure you harness the flow of influence. What that basically means in a nice way is do name dropping. The amount of clients that I've worked with who have worked for big organizations or they've been aligned with industry associations that are very reputable, but they don't put it in their bio. You want to make sure that you're doing that. So I'm going to show you an example of this done well. And it's really just this particular sentence that I think sums up everything that I'm talking about here. So in case you can't see it, it says, I'm an award-winning physicist, former chief analyst for Citibank Australia, and the only vegetarian ever to be head of product development at Barbecues Galore. Right? It's great. That is personal branding done well. It shows personality. It's in his voice, conversational. It's in his tone. It harnesses the flow of influence. It establishes credibility, but it has personality. So that's what you want to try to aim for with your personal branding, with your bio. How many of you know you need to update your bio? Yeah. Give ChatGPT a go. It's actually quite impressive, but just make sure you got your prompts right. And guys, we'll get to Q&A at the end if you have any, and of course I'll be out at the Meet the Speaker section. So if you have any specific questions that you do want to ask me in regards to any of this, I'm more than happy and looking forward to helping you. Okay, the next one is serve an audience. How many of you like the term self-promotion? Yeah, there's usually like one or two people in the room, and I totally admire that. That's great. But most people don't like the word self-promotion because for them, they think it's a bit dirty. It's a bit grimy. You don't want to, I have a lot of people say to me, but Carly, I'm just not that type of person. I don't like to self-promote. Well, this comes back to what I was talking about before in terms of not wanting to come across like you have a big ego. Don't self-promote. Make it selfless. And what I mean by that is focus on what you can give to the audience, how you can serve the audience. So as a really practical example, let's say today, after this session, I post on social media, on LinkedIn, that I was a speaker at the FAAA Congress. And you see that a lot on LinkedIn, right? People say, oh, I'm so thrilled that I was invited to speak at this and that event, right? And then that's it. It's like, oh, that's amazing. But when you come at it from the perspective of, I'm going to serve the audience, I'm going to think about this post, what can I actually give? How can I give to the audience in this post? It would be more, today I spoke at the FAAA Congress, and these were the 4 steps that I took the audience through. Yeah? So I'm actually thinking about, well, how does this add value to the audience? Yes, I've established that I've been invited to speak. I'm making that small announcement, but most importantly, I'm adding value to the audience. So when you start to shift your mindset and focus on that purpose, focus on serving, I promise that it's going to change the way you communicate. It will change the way you promote yourselves forever. So serve an audience. The questions that you want to ask are, what problems are you solving for your clients and audience? How can you add value? And I think this is really important in your industry. In the lead up to this event, when I was speaking to the organizers, they did point out that it's actually a big problem now that you've got people that are not qualified out in the market giving advice that they really shouldn't be giving online. They're finfluencers or something like that, which puts more onus on you who are all qualified to change that. I came across this quote from John Maxwell, who probably in reality was writing this more about leadership, but I think it really relates to what we're talking about in terms of starting to share with an audience, put yourself out there. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why would anyone else? And I thought that was really clever to think about that. You know, and it really does make you think about, how am I adding value? What is the problem I'm solving? Am I really making the effort to give here? Okay, the last one is seek a platform. Now notice how the operative word there is seek. It's not, when I am good enough, a platform will emerge or an opportunity will arise. And this was the mistake that I was making in my career, is that I had a misguided belief that when I am good enough, I'll be invited to speak. When I am good enough, I'm going to have that opportunity to put myself out there. But the reality is, for most of us, that person doesn't exist. We have to give ourselves permission to show up. We have to take that first step. So seeking a platform involves really thinking about, well, firstly, who do I want to reach? Who do I want to see me and to hear me? Where are they? And making the effort to seek those opportunities, ask for those opportunities, pitch for those opportunities. Not expect that when you're good enough, you're just going to be invited. Because I can tell you, having worked in PR for many, many years, even what you see in the media, 95% of that has been placed, whether it's by an individual who's pitched to the media or through a PR agency. You have to proactively look pitch for and ask for those opportunities. Now, I want to do a bit of a role play here just to really cement this idea. And I need 2 willing and able volunteers. 2, I've got one lady over there in the white shirt. Yes, please. Give her a round of applause. And one gentleman here. Give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. It's a bit of a trek. Okay, so we've got Brandon here. And we have Ishwa. Nice to meet you. Okay, guys, one of you has to be the business owner and one of you has to be the client. Don't you love that? You'll be the business owner? Ishwa, you actually get the easier job, so come over here. So Ishwa's going to stand here with me. Brandon, you're going to come over here. Okay. All right, here we go. You didn't think about this, did you? Now, sit on the hot seat. Okay, so Brandon, what I'm going to get you to do is you've got a little pouch here of goodies. So you've got some colouring in pencils. And I heard, did you do some drawing in the session before? Okay, so you've been practicing your drawing. So I want you to draw the first thing. Do you want me to put those on your lap? There you go. I want you to draw the first thing that comes to mind. And don't let the audience, and definitely don't let Ishwa see, okay? So you just go ahead and draw. Start drawing the first thing that comes to mind. You can draw whatever you want, and if you can make it big as well. So, oh, it started a little bit small there, didn't you? Okay, perfect. All right, so while Brandon's doing that, so Ishwa. Now, you know now that Brandon's drawing, right? Because you heard me say it. Okay, perfect. Now you're the client and Brandon's the business owner. Yep. Yeah, is that right? Did I just confuse myself? Yes, sorry guys. Brandon, sorry, you're the business owner. Well, you obviously meant to be the business owner. Okay, Ishra, you're the client. Sucked him into that, didn't we? Okay, so client. Do you know exactly what Brandon is drawing? Really? But you know who Brandon is? Yeah. And obviously you're a client. Okay. But you don't know exactly what he's drawing? You do? No, you don't know. That's funny because I assume as the client you would know what the business owner is doing all the time, what they're up to, what they're achieving, but you don't. Uh-huh. But you don't know what he's drawing right now. No, exactly. You can't unless you were some kind of mind reader. Okay, Ishra, you just wait there. Let me see how Brandon's going. Wow. This is a whole new calling for you, right? You've obviously practiced in the last session. Okay, I love it. Okay, I'll give you just a few seconds more to finish that. I love it. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so Brandon, what I want you to do is I want you to hide that now and take it over to Ishwa and only let Ishwa see it. Okay? So take it over to Ishwa and only let Ishwa see it. Now, Ishwa, I want you, so you can give that to Ishwa now. I want you to describe to the audience, in this case, guys, you represent the market. I want you to describe, thank you, Wendy. I want you to describe exactly what is that on that picture. Okay.
First of all, hello everyone. I hope everyone is well today. So basically, the first thing what I would like to tell, why is everyone here? Like because of FAAA, we are all here for the Congress. And today is this time, what is the main motive of FAAA? I think everybody knows that. Yeah, that's right. Go for it. Yeah, you said it right. I can hear someone saying that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's what he has written. And if we just elaborate that, like basically growing together, that's why we are here. We want the industry to grow. Students like us, they get a platform, represent us, and yeah.
So Ishwa, what is in the picture?
Okay, so on top of it, what he has done is, Brandon has done a good job here.
Yeah.
First was FAAA, and on top of it, what he did was personal branding. Like as we say, I would love to sell myself as well. Like, go for it. I would love to do it, promote and do everything like that.
Okay, perfect. This is actually a perfect example. Now, word of mouth is amazing, right? This is an example of word of mouth, right? We, as business owners, who here is a business owner? Put your hand up. Yep, perfect. And who here works for someone? Yep, okay. So word of mouth applies in both contexts, right? We like people to recommend us. We like people to talk about what we're doing. What could be the downside of word of mouth? What might be some of the limitations of word of mouth? Now, Ishwa, by the way, you're an incredible speaker and you've got amazing stage energy. So just give her a round of applause. But if I ask the audience what that picture is, they probably don't know, right? And that's not to criticize, but that is an example of the potential limitation of word of mouth. So just shout it out or raise your hand. What are some of the drawbacks to word of mouth? What could be some of the limitations of word of mouth? It's one person's perspective, 100%. So you're depending on their language, their experience to try to tell you what it is. Yes, the lady. Misunderstanding. You might misunderstand that the way that they're telling you what it is. Yep. They're not painting the right picture. Yeah, it's not necessarily exactly the picture that you want them to be painting. What else? What could be some other drawbacks of word of mouth? And they're all great, by the way. Miscommunication, right? So what could Brandon do, assuming you're either the company or the market, what might Brandon do to actually make sure that you know exactly what he's doing? What could he do? Project it. Show you the picture. So Brandon, you are going to show your work of art. Guys, look at that. Can you actually see that? Give him a round of applause. Look at that. I mean, Picasso, eat your heart out. Can I just ask, is that actually meant to be me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm so skinny. Yeah. I love it. Guys, give Ishwa and Brendan a round of applause. You guys can take a seat. Thank you so much. So I just want you to take a mental snapshot of that, because we often do assume the people around us, whether it's clients, whether it's our team, whether it's direct reports, whether it's our managers, we assume they know what we're doing. We assume they know what we're up to. We assume they know what we're achieving. It's actually, in psychology, it's called the spotlight effect. We go through life thinking that people are talking about us, thinking about us way more than what they actually are. Because who are they thinking about? They're thinking about themselves. So it's not their job to keep you top of mind. It's your job to keep top of mind. And you can only do that when you proactively seek a platform and show people what you're up to, what you're doing. And do it through the energy of wanting to genuinely add value. I mean, that picture, Brandon, that will add value to my office wall, I promise you. I'll show my kids, look. Okay, so just to recap. Be your future self. Own your story. Serve an audience. Seek a platform. Have you found the session today helpful? Raise your hands. Amazing. Have you got at least one thing you can put into play after this session? Okay, great, because that's important. So just to officially wrap up. 5 years ago, I ran my first ever personal branding workshop. There are 11 people in the room. And at the time, that was really big for me. It was the first time I'd ever done it. A week later, I spoke to my best friend on Wednesday, and on Friday she was gone. She passed away unexpectedly. Now, I'm sure many of you have experienced the pain and trauma of losing someone you love, of course. For me, it wasn't just the trauma of losing Judith. It was actually also knowing that she was on the precipice of launching a namesake brand. And the thought that the world would not now have the opportunity to experience her genius really haunted me for a long time. It still does. And it only occurred to me recently that her passing, she gave me the greatest gift. Because it's knowing that that energy is the underpinning of everything I do today. Because maybe you don't have a namesake brand in you, but I'm sure you have stories, ideas, experiences, insights that you can share that genuinely have an impact, that can genuinely make a positive difference in the lives, whether it's one person or a million people. It doesn't actually matter. But the reality is, at some stage, there does come a day where it's too late. And so don't let it get to that. So guys, I hope today the session has informed you, empowered you, inspired you. I hope you leave today knowing, thinking, and showing up. And I hope at the end of all of this that you continue to be the brand in you, believe the brand in you, and let the world see the brand in you. Thank you so much. Thank you.